if I were to kind of look at water, starting from the independence scenario to what green revolution, how it moved on with a core component which is not being recognized as the water, which helped the green revolution to sustain and move ahead. Now with that, we formulated various programs in the 72's drought, and then on to the kind of various watershed related programs, how it got evolved. Finally, it got formulated into the common guidelines, then on to the Haryali guidelines, and to the watershed program that we see in the last 2 decades, which kind of had watershed, watershed plus, and many other components. Then INRM, integrated watershed management programs, and moving on to the recent ones of springshed, water quality, and WASH, and many other aspects. I think in 1957, we also constituted something called as river boards, if I were right. From the river boards to where we are now, to water user groups and to various institutions that have been nested, whether these are the Maharashtra Water Regulatory Authorities or the various regulatory authorities that have been set up, to the various acts that have been formulated, the 1993 Pivotal Act of Drinking Water of Maharashtra state, and then moving on to the various states. And the last decade wala one, which is the AP Volta Act, and then subsequently the PIM and various PGWM, Model Groundwater Bill, and various acts put together. So have been the evolution of the policy landscape as well. 1987 was the first water policy after independence. That's the kind of time frame that we took for formulating our first national water policy, which got revised in 2001, again with various inputs and water quality and various components coming in. And finally, again in 2012, when Meherbai was the chairperson, we again revised it and got integrated components of groundwater, springs, water quality, and various other parts. Now from 2012 to where we are, it's been a long journey, another decade journey that we have covered up. Now in this scenario, there's been a landscape of change, what has happened with the water scenario. Now how do we look at water governance from various aspects? And so now I invite the panelists, starting with Liby, who has been the pioneer from the Gram Vikas organization as the WASH related specialists and experts who have been working in Odisha and various parts of the region and contributing to the various landscapes programs over here. Liby. I invite Mohan Bhai from DSC Foundation. Mohan Bhai heads DSC Foundation, Development Support Center Foundation. He has been another figure in this scenario where water-related work has been kind of pioneered through participatory irrigation management. May I invite Senti, Ms. Sentimongla. She heads NEIDA, Northeast Initiative Development Agency, that's working in Nagaland and Northeastern region. I invite Prakash. Prakash heads WOTR, again a 3-decade-old organization which has recently completed 30 years and been a pioneer in watershed-related works. I invite Shobit, again based on Samaj, Pragati, Sahayog's work, which have been a kind of pioneering in its own way to kind of contribute to the various programs and policy landscapes. Over to you, Libby, with setting some ground rules. We would be sharply looking at the session to close at 90 minutes, having everyone to kind of look at how this session can be managed within that time frame. Over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Harsha. And warm good afternoon. I will not crib about doing this session at 2:30 and all that, but it's customary to do that. Sleep well is all what I would say. I will wake you up when it's time to ask questions. Harshvardhan has set the context of the larger water governance issue. He touched upon a few components or elements of that, but I don't need to stress this point about water and its governance, largely understood through conflicts at various levels, whether it is river water sharing, river linking, any of that. But I think for this next 90 minutes, I guess we have to come way down the, to a more real, I'm not saying that the others are not real, but more day-to-day, more closer to ground and our lived experiences. As organizations that work, whether you do livelihoods, health, education, land and water is critical. I mean, you can't do anything without these two natural resources anyway. The panelists is a very heavy panel. In fact, if you count the number of years here, is about 145 years of collective experiences around water at different forms. The way we will do this is we will have a bunch of opening experiences, remarks from each of the panel members. I expect to do that over about 25 to 30 minutes. And then I will wake you up for your first round of questions. We'll have a quick wake-up session. I will then go back to the panel for a more open-ended Q&A, and then come back again to the audience, and we will close at 4 o'clock. Now, before I hand over to my fellow colleagues, my colleagues here, I just wanted to give you a sense of what we want to do today in these 90 minutes. Mohan comes with experiences of groundwater sharing, the participatory irrigation management system, of having done that from the time it was an idea to, doing it, failing in some places, succeeding in many other places, having contributed to policy discussions and actions around it. Prakash represents the other side, which is, both ground and surface water, but from a, rich to valley, where water falls and where water goes and where water stays, and that entire design and conceptualization of watershed management, integrated watershed management, and how, having moved to beyond watershed around ecosystem-based adaptation and how look at challenges there. NEIDA, Senti, the work in the Northeast being a very different context. A lot of the work is around spring sheds and how one in the mountain ecosystem look at the primary source of water, which is springs, and the work around that. And Shobit, around groundwater again, but how does one, all of them have the participation and, collaborative governance, but how has in the Malwa, in the regions around Malwa, Samaj, Pragati, Sahayog been doing that and building institutions, and also fair amount of forward linkages, downstream applications, and there are some common themes which we will come to, but to begin with, I would request each of the panelists to speak for about 5-7 minutes to kind of set a context to your own, where you come from and what you've done and the challenges you faced. And I think the one common across all of us in the room is probably it is a very community, and in our case, a substantially rural, people in rural areas focused conversation. So that will be the common ground. Mohan?
Yeah. Thank you, Liby ji. Thank you to...
I will give you time.
Okay, yeah, sure. Thank you to Axis Bank Foundation for giving this opportunity. Let me give a brief introduction of my organization and its work. So we are Development Support Center, headquartered at Ahmedabad, Gujarat. We have our operations in 4 states, MP, Gujarat, Rajasthan, and Maharashtra. And we work on a strategy. It has been evolved in last 30 years. We call it water to wealth toward well-being. So we try to develop 3 verticals in every villages, social vertical, water and land development, sustainable agriculture, and enterprise. So, I mean, the title is Future of Water Governance in Rural India. So, and I believe that before thinking governance, I mean, it is very important to take a stock of what we have done in the past collectively. I mean, the government, the CSOs, and the community, and what worked and what are still the gaps. So, I mean, we know that we are a very large country, and fortunately, and we receive almost 4,000 billion cubic meter of water through precipitation. And out of that, about 1,120 billion cubic meter is available to us for utilization. Rest goes on evaporation and in the sea. Out of that, a huge chunk of water has been stored in major, medium, and minor irrigation projects. Almost 6,200 dams have been built by the state government, central governments. till now. And it has created a potential of 280 billion cubic meter. And some projects are going on which will additionally give about 40 billion cubic meter more water. So the total potential will be created about 320 billion cubic meter water, which is about 49% of the available water. So I mean, we must congratulate ourselves that we have a large infrastructure with us. We have saved 49% of our water in our reservoirs, different level, minor, major, and medium irrigation. So above 10,000 hectares, they are called major. 10,000 to 2,000, they are called medium. And below 2,000, they are called minor. And some minor are with panchayats, and some minor irrigation are with water resource department. But the issue is that, I mean, there is a universal problem across the world that the gap between the created potential and the actual utilization in irrigation is very high. I mean, 30 to 70%. Various studies reveal, UMI studies also revealed, done by Tushar Shah Sahab, that there is a wide range of gap. And this is a cause of concern because the water is not reaching to the tail end farmers. If we consider that the total command area of our country is 6.2 crore hectare, so and the national average of land holding is say 1.1 hectare per farmer. So same number of farmers are waiting for water, and 30 to 40% of those farmers are not getting water because of the vicious management cycle of bureaucratic irrigation management. Because the repairs are not done of canals, farmer doesn't get water, they are dissatisfied, they don't pay water charges to the government, and similarly government don't contribute their fund for the repair and maintenance. And this is a huge problem. So because of this vicious, nothing is working. And there is a program called participatory irrigation management, right? It's a concept, and now it has become a program, and now it has become a legal framework in more than 15 states where we have large, medium, minor irrigation projects. And my organization, Development Support Center, and I think SPAs and AKRSPI and so many organizations, we have tried to demonstrate participatory approaches of irrigation management at the grassroots level. And we have been successful in making workable, robust water user association. I'm very happy to inform you that a water user organization we formed in 1994 is still functioning. They don't take a single five from the government. They run their canal, they collect water charges, right, and put in the system. And they pay 50% to the government. They thank you very much for constructing this dam for us. So, I mean, there are two components, hardware and software. And I think software components can be taken care by the CSOs like us. We know all these procedures, practice, processes of community mobilizing, training them technically, financially, administratively. And the government has a role to provide support for infrastructure development and giving solid legal framework. Right. And I will come on the three models we have worked on. One model of best hardware support, best structure support only. Okay, so I conclude just. In Gujarat, the second model we have tried out in Madhya Pradesh, Man and Jobat project with tribal community, where we have least invested, but did good community organization and got good results. The third model is of Maharashtra, where there is no money given by the government, and the farmers came together, and they made a change, actually. So with that note, I will hand over.
Thank you, Axis Bank, thank you, Liby. So I will emphasize on this work which we are doing in this rainfed area. Basically, we are working in the rainfed area, and majority of us in this house, they are aware that in the rainfed area, basically there is issue of livelihood. These people, since this total area is degraded area, so there is no option of the livelihood for the particular farmers or households. Because majority of the farmers, they are dependent on this ecosystem, and the ecosystem is not able to provide this livelihood, then ecosystem services, then actually, then again, there is a more type of exploitation of this ecosystem. So this is cycle of degradation, ecosystem degradation is going on. So actually, on that perspective, actually, Watershed Organization Trust is working. Actually, this is a transition, or this is a phase, maybe I can say. We started in 1993, mainly emphasizing on this watershed development. It's participatory watershed development. Of course, that is very systematic approach from reach to valley. That means which we have to treat each and every piece of the land. Simple techniques which we normally say, the water which is running, maybe make it stop, the water which is stopping force into the underground. That is simple principle. So with that principle, actually we are working. But what happened in this, during this phase, main emphasis on soil and water conservation. Of course, this soil is conserved in that particular area, water conservation is already there, but that second component, which is very, very important, is basically agriculture. That was missing. Then we included in this agriculture component in it, because it's agriculture. And of course, since this is a participatory, its social component is always there. Without the social component, nothing will happen. So in that worked for few years, because farmers and everyone, they were very happy. The water is available in this rain-fed area, which was totally degraded land, is converted into productive land. Water level is increased. The people, farmers who are taking one crop, they are taking two crops. But what happened in between, basically in some of the villages, the water exploitation was much more. That means whatever this supply or requirement, more than that, farmers are taking more water. Exploitation of water becomes a problem. So again, so what we realized, actually, this we have not worked, we have to work on the demand side also. Water management and water governance is key component, because it's just water, how much of water which we can conserve may not solve the problem of the farmers, but it will not give a continuous livelihood to the farmers. So on that demand side, actually, we started working on this. There are few examples actually in the one of the in the Sangamner blocks of this thing. So because of this exploitation of water, the work which they did maybe 4 years back, again they come to the same level. So that was not the expected result which we want. Then actually water management governance is established, and that then we have changed a little bit our approach in this. So in between, in 2007, again one more layer in this is basically a climate change. Because when we started in 1993, that time we were not that much as aware about what was the climate variation and how it affects this whole ecosystems and agriculture ecosystems and other ecosystems, or something on that line. So the climate change adaptation component is included in this. And see, in this case, in this whole approach, if we will not consider the climate variation or weather variation, we will not complete this whole cycle. So that component is added. Then recently 2019, actually we thought it's ecosystem-based adaptation is this main approach which we have to adopt. Why? Because it's watershed, maybe one hydrological cycle, but it has to go beyond this. It should not be restricted to only one part of this watershed. So actually, it's this landscape management and this entire area. That type of ecosystem approach is needed. Of course, this governance part and this thing that is required, but at the same time, in terms of approach, the ecosystem-based adaptation approach is required. What it will give, basically there are three components. It will give enhance the adaptive capacities of these people. At the same time, governance. It improves this governance. And the third part is, since this ecosystem is there, basically, the ecosystems, because of this ecosystem services we can maintain this ecosystem. So based on these three aspects, actually, ecosystem-based adaptation approach is followed. And one point before I close this is this thing. We always believe whatever we do, that should be a pilot. That pilot has to upscale, because NGO cannot replicate the work which this, not replicate means is not do the same work which the government can do. We can have a pilot, and that pilot has to be upscaled. And second part is, whenever we work in this community, basically, we should demystify technology. Even if this our whole program is based on the scientific program, that is, technology has to demystify so that community can execute this work by themselves. So that these are the 2 points which I would like to emphasize here. Thank you.
So thank you for inviting me to be a part of this panel. It's an honor. I represent this organization called the Northeast Initiative Development Agency. We work in Nagaland, Mizoram, and Arunachal Pradesh. So until 5 years ago, the bulk of our work was focusing on rural livelihoods. So compared to my co-panelists, we are fairly recent in our work in the water sector. So our experiences, like Libby has shared in the Springshed revival spring conservation work. And I think across the country also, the focus on spring is fairly recent, compared to the focus on irrigation and, watershed. And so, in a way, our work in Nagaland, Mizoram, and Arunachal Pradesh in spring is a direct consequence of the work that others before, mostly from the NGO sector, like I think Chirac and Himothan is also here, and then organizations like PSI and Equadem, their work, and then the learning, we took it, and then we have implemented in the 3 states. So today I'll share with you a little bit about our experience. Like I've said, we are still learning, fairly recent. So the interesting thing about the Northeast is the paradox of the highest rainfall in the country. If you look at the average annual rainfall in India, I think it's about 120 centimeters, if I'm not mistaken. But in the Northeast, the average would be around 400 centimeters, so which is even more, 2-3 times higher. But the problem is of water storage, both overground and then underground, the aquifers, which the springs depend on. And we talk about climate change, and one of the direct consequences that we feel in the mountain states is the drying up of springs, where we depend for drinking water, domestic irrigation, and even the streams, surface waters are dependent on the collective flow from the springs. So now talking about climate change, the thing that we have experienced directly is the change in rainfall pattern. So earlier, that 400 centimeter that I spoke about, we would get it over a period of 6 months, right? Slowly. But now, it's very intense. It's focused. So 8 hours of rainfall, we would get in half an hour, to the point where we lose the water as runoff. Now, we work in around, I think, more than 500 villages. And in all the villages, the common response that we got from the farmers is the springs are drying up. And especially, that 6 months of abundance where, we have rains, and then, 6 months of, water shortage, water stress, where families would be forced to, reduce their, sanitation habits. They would clean less, they would wash less, so, some coping mechanisms. In towns, we pay around, I think, 800 to 1,200 rupees for, 2,000, liters. And because in the winter months, the water sources are drying up. So now, our work in springs started as a public-private, partnership, where the state government of Nagaland, PSI, Equadem, with support from Tata Trust, we all came together and, worked in treating, 100 springs. Now, so it was a collaborative effort. And in the Northeast, unlike the rest of the country, the forests, natural resources, more than 90% is owned by the community. So when we talk about springs and then your catchment area of springs, it is either owned by a private individual, it will be owned by a community, the village council, or the clan. So so in all the 100 villages, we spoke to 100 different stakeholders, right? The councils, to agree them to allow us, help them treat the catchment area, and then commit to not cutting the trees for the next 10, 20, 30 years. So it was a collaborative effort. And so now, when I talk about the issue of water storage, both overground and underground, now when we were first reaching out to the community and then asking them, do you know where the water for the springs come from? So we hardly ever got the answer of it's the rainfall percolating and then stored in the underground. So generally it would be there's a pond 2-3 mountains away, so it's from that pond we're getting that water, or from the river, or from the ocean. So so that demystification and understanding of how aquifer works. We talk about water governance, right? Without that knowledge, that water governance, will not be possible. So starting from there, and then also our work with the government, with the collaboration with 100 Springs. Now that collaboration continues in Mizoram. We recently signed an MOU with the state government where we would bring in the technical expertise of mapping the catchment area, and then the government would put in the money that has scaled up. So, but even with the government, when we talk about governance, water is a cross-cutting issue. So. PhD is looking at one thing, your irrigation department is looking at another thing, agriculture department. So even at the government level, unless and until there is close coordination and coordinated effort, that coordination will not happen. And the issue of water is felt at the micro level, at the community level. And my action directly impacts the availability of water in a way in the micro scale. So it is very important, one, like I've mentioned earlier, to help the community understand, how aquifer work, and that's how, we can build on the, governance.
Thank you. So I'm from Samaj Pragati Sahayog. So Samaj Pragati Sahayog is basically working in central India amongst in the tribal locations mostly, and these, as Mohan described, degraded, and the underdevelopment is at a very high index. So Samaj Pragati Sahayog works on water, it works on sustainable agriculture, it works on institutions, it works on basically inclusive finance and livestock and livelihoods. But in water, what SPS is also known is for their work on water, which is which is interesting because when we started with groundwater in Devas, where it was facing a groundwater problem. So groundwater has been a term which has been in our mind for the more than 35 years. And after that, what happened is, when we came into watershed management, it was these initial failures which has actually, drove us into going beyond watershed in its understanding. So what we added to watershed was that, one of our ponds, which was on the drain-off point, it rained, water collected in the pond, but then it dried up within a week. So it was a failure which was, we were quite, we have been talking about how the watershed would work and how people would get water. And in fact, the pond filled, but within a week, the whole water dried up. So that made us, go forward. Why is this happening? So although the whole watershed approach from ridge to valley is important, But then it was important to understand what is happening below the ground. So how does the water, see, the whole watershed is a technology about basically recharging water tables. But whether the recharge is happening, at what rate it is happening, what is the aquifer which is going to get recharged, and what are the people, how will they access this water? So unless we thought if we don't understand this, and it so happened that we were in a place where the geology was very complex. The Narmada Valley portion where we have all kinds of rocks, igneous, metamorphic, and sedimentary rock. So and not only the different types of rocks, they are juxtaposed. So watershed didn't become a very simple thing, which is taught. The general principles are correct, but it needs to include what is below the ground. And that's where SPS came in. And what we did was, we tied up with Aquadam. Harsh was also there, and basically trying to understand the hydrogeology of the area, the lithology of the area, basically understanding the whole place as how the water moves within the ground, and how does it affect the watershed. So basically, to cut the story short, what we did was we tied up with Aquadam, and then we decided, Aquadam were working on groundwater, and they basically said that if any watershed to be successful, it needs to understand what is below the ground. And what we did after that was to basically do the typology of the area. Basically characterize aquifers, how aquifers are different, how each aquifer has a different characteristic, and how would it affect your watershed design. Because what happens is, where are these recharge areas? Where are these discharge areas? What will you do on the recharge areas? What will you do on the discharge area? Whether your intervention is actually there, or you are just blindly putting something which has been described as a watershed intervention. So the whole marking of these typologies basically made us customize the watershed, customize the interventions in the watershed. And this is the case. I'll just share a simple example in the sense, because one of the watershed we did, we were expecting that there'll be a recharge in all the wells, but that didn't happen. So these are different typologies where the water within the ground was behaving differently. And the 6 typologies, basically we made protocols for each watershed, how and where this water is to be shared, used by people, what kind of pumping sets would be there, what kind of specific yield for particular well or for the whole area would be required. So this came through institutional arrangements where the WEJs were very powerful, and most of the WEJs we have is women-led. So you're talking about an institution you're talking about governance. Governance comes only if you can manage. Management comes only if you can basically measure what you need to manage. If you're not able to measure what is there, then probably it'll never be managed or never be governed. So these protocols, which came from different typologies, were the things where your governance rules of how the water and what kind of community, what crops will be grown. So the other thing which I want to say, this also becomes important because 90% of the water is being used in agriculture. Right, so out of the one unit, 90% of it is being used in agriculture, and out of that, 60 to 70% is groundwater dependent. So although Mohan was telling us about how much capacity we have built, but clearly we can see because of the failures that it is not reaching the people, and what instead is they are relying on the groundwater resource. So surface water can be managed because you can see it. But groundwater, what happens to groundwater when you can't see it? How do you manage that? So that is where, understanding geology, hydrology, aquifers, what are the character of that particular aquifer, how much water it can store. These things, become important. Very similar to the kind of, why you were driven to spring shed development. It's very similar because more complex the geology, the relationship between one well or the bore well, that will become quite complex. And so this is where we are placed. And I can say that this is how, because Dr. Misha was also part of the new water policy, and where understanding typologies and aquifer mapping comes in. And it's a difficult thing. How do you demystify aquifer mapping? Demystification of watershed is there, but how do you demystify rocks? How do you demystify aquifer mapping? So this is another aspect which SPS worked on, basically what we call the communitarization of aquifer mapping. It's a different syntax. It's not that the people don't understand, but it's a syntax which is used differently. So that's so later in the I think discussion we can keep talking about it. Yeah.
We have to cover some more ground.
Yes.
Yeah. So those 4 experiences contextually, groundwater, irrigated area, to rain-fed, to central Indian degraded lands, to the far eastern Himalayas in the northeast. And I'm sure many of you would be already familiar with a lot of the work, but listening to this together gives you a sense of the diversity. While we know that, the kind of challenges that each of them referred to, some of it were policy, some of it were actual behaviors on the ground. So we'll need to build on this to kind of look at the future. But before we do that, I'll open up for 5 minutes, maybe two questions. If you can keep this to more clarificatory in nature now, because then we will have a better sense of the discussion we can have later. If there are any questions, if somebody wants to wake up and ask a question, you are welcome to. So we have 2 now.
I am Madan from Harsa Trust. मेरा ये क्वेश्चन है कि आजकल जो हमारा गवर्नमेंट है सोलर एनर्जी के ऊपर बहुत काम कर रहा है, और हमारा ओडिशा में भी हम लोग सोलर एनर्जी के यूज करके बहुत ज़्यादा हमारा एरिया में ग्राउंड वाटर को एक्सट्रैक्शन कर रहे हैं. तो ये क्या हमारे लिए एक थ्रेट है? वही मेरा एक क्वेश्चन है. थैंक यू.
If you want to answer.
Thank you so much. I'm Yatesh from Ibtada, Rajasthan. Very good, topic for discussion, and very good conversation from eminent panelists. So my question is basically, like when we work on this water harvesting, we do harvest a lot of water, revive a lot of traditional water harvesting structures in Rajasthan. And once there is some recharge, and as you are saying rightly that major irrigation is dependent on, groundwater. So recharging is happening somewhere else, and, people are benefiting somewhere else. So how this, we can have this kind of equitable kind of groundwater distribution, on how that governance can happen? That is the question. Thank you.
हाँ ये भी है, नहीं क्वेश्चन कनेक्टेड है. सो द एग्जैक्ट जो टाइटल है फ्यूचर ऑफ द वाटर गवर्नेंस. सो व्हाट इज द रोल ऑफ द फैमिली लेवल वाटर गवर्नेंस एंड कम्युनिटी वाटर गवर्नेंस? हाउ वी कैन लिंक in either water re-storage, water recharge or water using.
I just want to understand, in all the areas where you work, at the village level and district level, maybe up state level, how good is the understanding of what is an aquifer? I just want to understand that.
Good afternoon all. I am from Poshari. So basically we are working in the eastern Himalayan zone, that is Darjeeling Kalimpong portion. So we are working spring shed management for the last 10 years with many partners. सो पहाड़ में जो होता है एक आप जो मतलब बहुत अच्छे से एक्सप्लेन किया है अबाउट एक्वीफर एंड जियोलॉजिकल सिस्टम. सो आई एम वर्किंग फॉर द लास्ट 6 ईयर. तो क्या होता है जो एक्सकेममेंट स्लोप होता है, डीप स्लोप होता है. ज़्यादातर स्प्रिंग जो डीप स्लोप में होता है, एक्सकेममेंट स्लोप में जो रिचार्ज जोन होता है, तो अगर मैं वाटर गवर्नेंस के बात करता हूँ तो इसमें जो एक आता है बात वाटर सस्टेनेबिलिटी का. आप लोगों ने एक्सेसिबिलिटी का बात बोला, मैडम ने वाटर मैनेजमेंट का बात बोला. तो वो जो सस्टेनेबिलिटी के लिए जो रिचार्ज का काम करना पड़ता है, तो जो बेनिफिटेड कम्युनिटी है वो अदर जोन में है और जहाँ पे काम करना है वो अदर जोन में है. तो ये कैसे मैनेज होता है, ये मुझे पर्सनली जानना है. एंड सेकेंड थिंग, जे वी कांट डू द थिंग अलोन इन द मतलब कुछ छोटा जगह में हम लोग कर रहे हैं, लेकिन जब स्केल का बाढ़ आता है से नॉट ओनली गवर्नमेंट, अदर CSO नेटवर्क बिल्ड मतलब कलेक्टिव वे में आके कैपेसिटेट करके भी हम लोग काम कर सकते हैं. बट थिंग इज़ दैट जो सेंस ऑफ ओनरशिप होता है, सेंस ऑफ एजेंसीज टुवर्ड वाटर, वो कहीं पर मतलब मिसिंग हो जाता है. लोग टुगेदर कलेक्टिव CSO नेटवर्क में आके वो फंडिंग और प्रोजेक्ट के बारे में ज़्यादातर बात करता है. तो ये कैसे, किस तरह से ये चैलेंजेस को हम लोग मिटिगेट कर सकते हैं. सो दैट इज
As per discussion, you have said that we have set an example of participatory irrigation management, watershed projects and spring shed project. And that project guidelines or implementation strategy received गवर्नमेंट ऑल्सो. कुछ गवर्नमेंट के द्वारा भी इनकी पॉलिसीज रिसीव की गई है. तो इतने आइडियल प्रोजेक्ट हमने इम्प्लीमेंट किए, लेकिन लास्ट 10 साल से हम देख रहे हैं कि क्लाइमेट चेंज में बड़े बदलाव आ रहे. अगर पानी ही सही तरह से नहीं प्राप्त होगा तो हमारे जो प्रयास है वो कैसे. तो मेरा यही क्वेश्चन है कि क्या हम इस बारे में क्लाइमेट चेंज प्रोजेक्ट के इम्प्लीमेंटेशन में क्या कम पड़े हैं, या हमारे स्तर पर नहीं गए कि उसकी पॉलिसीज गवर्नमेंट में प्रभावित हो. तो ये मेरा क्वेश्चन.
So what has essentially happened is मैंने अगला Q&A के लिए जितने भी पॉइंट्स लिखे थे वही आप लोग काफ़ी हद तक, कुछ शब्दों का अंतर है. So what I will do is rather than address each question differently, there are 3 sections I wanted to engage with, and a lot of the questions that come out do on that. Pawan, your question was aquifers, yeah. So 3 sections I wanted to have this conversation around. Maybe it's open, whoever grabs the mic. First was around this whole not water governance in rural India, but water governance in our village. And as Jayeshwar was saying, water governance at the family level, family to upwards to the village. So community, and then the watershed and the basin and or the panchayat and the block. So user-centric governance ka, and how does one, talked about equity issues. 2 questions came around equity, upstream, downstream matters, but also equity in a social sense. Because the moment you talk about water, you're essentially benefiting people who use water for livelihoods. What about those who do not have much capability to use water? So ये एक मुद्दा है जो that I wanted to work on. So if you can also refer to specific questions that came from the audience and general views around what do we need to do to looking towards the future.
So to start with, what you asked, whether there is a understanding at the village level or at the district level. So about groundwater. So to understand groundwater, we need to understand aquifers. And at the government level, there is a very, very aggregate kind of understanding. There is the whole India is divided into 6 typologies, but it's too aggregate. It's too average. So unless you don't go to a very specific level, and not a village level in the sense, even a watershed level, you'll need to understand how aquifers behave. And, various areas would be different. Like the area where I come from is basically confined aquifers, but where people in the Indo-Gangetic plain or the Tamil Nadu, this thing, they're basically, shared aquifers, which go across, across villages, across districts, across this thing. So there the problem of, would be a very different way to approach it. And where we need, the other places need to approach it in a different way. But before all that, what you're saying about equitable distribution and things like that, we need to first know what we have. That is the issue, which gets further complicated in mountain, systems where you are dealing with spring sheds, which you are talking about. So the thing is, that is where people come in, because you are not dealing with some resource which is where people are not involved, or it's something which is alien, and you have a system which we have an understanding of science, but it's devoid of a certain sentiment of people who are basically using it and controlling. So this involves further this thing, and there are no easy answers to this. In my understanding, surface irrigation, because you are able to you see a particular place which is full of water and how it is going to be used is slightly more simpler. Not very simple again, because again people involved, they need to govern what kind of protocols, what kind of agriculture you are going to have, what kind of water usage you are going to do, what kind of pumps you are going to fit. So it's a very calibrated understanding, and this understanding also needs to be demystified with the people. They understand this. It's not that they don't understand it, but the problem is what happens when you pull from excess water from one borewell. How does it affect the well, the surface aquifer, or how does it affect the other borewell? So this kind of data is not there with the people, and the whole idea is to bring this data. So hopefully, if this data comes, people know about it. If this is what we are doing, or the other person is doing, is going to affect us in this way. Only then can you come to a protocol which is agreeable by everybody. So there is no formula to say let's do this. It's first to get the people together and then get that data. Like for example, we have a lot of thing on agriculture. Itna rain hoga, aisa wo aayega, ye pesticide dalo, wo dalo. There is a whole lot of thing which is there for the farmers, but there is nothing about what is there in the aquifer. How much water have we got there? So yeah.
To supplement Shobit ji and to answer your question, bottom up, yeah, right? So जयेश भी ऐसा है कि मैं आपको एक छोटी सी स्टोरी से सुनाता हूँ, तो शायद आपको और सभी को हमको पता चले. See, water is a common pool. It is a common resource, and the awareness is totally opposite. किसान कहता है कि मुझे जितना है मैं उठा लूँ, right? So it has become individual, commodity. And all our programs, even whether it is PIM, canal system, or watershed, they have been considered as a supplies schemes. ज़्यादा आर्गुमेंट करेंगे, और हम भी क्या बोलते हैं गांव में जब यही कहते हैं ना कि पानी ज़्यादा हो जाएगा, you will be able to take the second crop, And अब जब हम आपके प्रश्न पे आते हैं कि हाउसहोल्ड लेवल की लिटरेसी क्या है, so there is a big danger in talking to the family कि आप कितना पानी यूज़ करते हो. He will immediately tell you that छोड़ो सर, मेरे पास तो पानी नहीं है, मेरे बाजू वाला तो 50 हेक्टेयर कर रहा है और मेरे पास 5 हेक्टेयर का भी नहीं है. So we were not in that position to have that dialogue or start that dialogue with the community. But thanks to all of our journey, that now we are working in all the layers of water. Canal irrigation, watershed, groundwater, on-farm water management. So, like I give an example, in Mehsana district of Gujarat, we are working as a DIP in Atal Bhujal Yojana. We take care of all sorts of water. So we are preparing a village level water budget and water security plan. लेकिन उसमें भी प्रॉब्लम क्या हुआ? Everybody says, okay, village level पे बढ़िया चीज़ है, but सब अपने अपने घर चले गए. Nobody owns that water budget. So now we are going deep dive. We are preparing a household water scorecard or water passbook So I think it is about the water literacy, and it is long journey has to be, traveled actually. But yes, and second example is a groundwater sharing cooperative. So, as you said, our approach is let's understand the issue, local issue, then talk with the community what is the probable solution in your context, looking to the resources, looking to the technology, looking to their understanding, their language, and then we try to develop some projects and models. So we did in Meghraj block of Gujarat, where we formed the first groundwater sharing cooperative in the state. And only 20 farmers, 20 hectare, हमको पता था कि 100 हेक्टेयर में जाएंगे तो कोई नहीं मांगेगा, झगड़ जाएंगे लोग. So 20 farmers with same clan or same hamlet, they came together, they registered their groundwater sharing cooperative. So they will work on 3 components. Augmentation of groundwater through water recharge. So they have mapped their aquifer, where the discharge zone, where the recharge zone. Then they are going to treat about 19 hectares of catchment area so that groundwater can be augmented. And we mapped out how many private sources are there. So there are 17 groundwater sources. 10 are failed, dried out. क्योंकि क्या है, पहले वाटरशेड के बाद में 100 फीट पे गए, फिर 200 पे, 300 पे. So nowadays only 5 tube wells are running. We said that every tube well you develop, you spend at least 3 lakh rupees. कितना और करोगे आप? Then they समझ गए कि नहीं भैया अब इसके बाद में हमारी ताकत नहीं है. So why don't we share? So those 3 farmers agreed to share their water with 17 farmers with the hope that no new drilling will be done. क्योंकि मेरा अभी 300 फीट का है, अगर दूसरे ने 400 फीट पे गया तो मैं गया काम से. So I think this is the shared learning of the local community, and I think these pilots will give some lessons to us, and we can be able to make some changes at the district level and at the national level. The main problem is, I think, district level. We are preparing water security plan in all the panchayats, but the problem, Libiji, is the Jila Panchayat. We told them that why don't you consolidate these water security plans and spend your money accordingly, but I think this is too early. They are also trying to understand our ideas and all that. They will buy it, I think, in next 2-3 years.
I endorsed the points which is Shobit and Mohan has mentioned. Two more points which I'd like to make here is water governance and water budgeting is not just engineering aspects. That is not just a calculation. That means this much of water is available from this rainfall, and we will have this much of crop. Nothing. That if we are doing this, then I think we are not giving justice to this. So basically, this is the social aspects, and social aspects, if you go into the deep, is basically behavioral change. Unless we make some type of behavioral change among this community, among the society, it will not happen. That is very, very clear. And if behavioral is basically with some belief, if you go to the social is this thing, na? So if we have to change the behavioral, you have to go in the belief. What is the belief? Belief is water. What he mentioned, water is my. This is owned by me, and I will use this water whatever I want. So that is actually one aspect which we have to do. And the second aspect is basically again what Shobit mentioned is correct. Is groundwater is invisible. So if we have to share something or show something, it is very difficult. So for that actually maybe we can have come out with some type of models. What we do normally, we prepared a 3D model. That is participatory 3D model. That is community driven visual integrator. So they come out with this like a visual model by which its calculation is difficult. I agree with this, but at the same time they will understand actually what is the source of my well, from where water is coming. And based on this maybe discussion can start, and maybe we can have some impact or something in these villages. And coming back to your question is, yes, there is an issue, this is conflict from upstream, downstream, everywhere. So unless we, what Shobit mentioned, unless we have aquifer mapping, it will not be solved. So at least it has to greater level understanding. Thank you.
Okay, so I've understood, bits and pieces of, the question. So one, you were asking about who actually does the work in the recharge zone. So in our experience, like I've mentioned, all the resources are owned by the community, and even if it's private land, the advantage of working in, the northeastern part is, it's very, easy to mobilize the community. So, communities come together, and even if I'm not getting any direct benefit from the water that is being, spring that is being treated, if the village council says that on such and such day, X number of people, we need the labor and services, then, people would come together and then do the treatment work. With regard to sharing, we have also had a few cases where, the catchment area of Spring A would fall in, another village. And then, you go and talk to, the other village, and then, they would let you, treat, the spring catchment area. So far, in the rural areas, we have not had a problem where, that individual owner would say that, this is my spring, I'm not going to share the water with, the rest of the community. So, but in the future, when, there's more commercialization, when by privatizing, that water source, like it has already happened in the urban villages where we are paying, 1,200 rupees for 2,000 liters of water. Even in the rural areas, I think, in the near future, that day might come where, an owner, because if he can commercialize it, he can, get money, he may stop the other community members from accessing, the water. So that's one. The other point about, you mentioned water literacy. I think I'm hearing it for the first time, and that is so critical. That is so important, not just for the communities and the villagers, but even for the general public, even at the government level. We have partnered with PHED in 2 states, in Mizoram and Nagaland, as their implementation support agencies in about 250 odd villages. Where we did the training of the Watson committees, SBCCs, and in none of the villages, PHE spoke about your water source sustainability. So it's all about pipes and installation of pipes, and so even at the government level, because the government, their work is driven by, at least in the context of the Northeast, what kind of schemes are available in, by the government. So if the scheme does not address your water source, then, they'll just lay the pipe, and then even if the pipe is not bringing you water, then, they have achieved the target. So that has, been our experience.
Thank you, Senti, for bringing that, because I wanted my next question is, actually, I would request you, 4 of you, to kind of step away from your living experience now and look at a bit of a crystal gazing based on what we already know. And this is from the demand side. A lot of the things that we are talking about, except for maybe a bit about behavior, we're generally talking about availability of water and on the supply side. See, what are we seeing around us? With Jal Jeevan Mission coming with 80 crore tap connections, the ratio between domestic and agriculture is going to, at least marginally shift. The demand for domestic water is going to increase because people are going to consume more water. If you look at the next 15, 20 years. May not be a huge shift, 80 may not become 60, but the 4% on bringing in domestic might actually double. That is one aspect. Second is the entire aspirational growth, especially in the regions that we work with, the semi-arid, dryland, northeast kind of areas. How has aspirations and how will that economic growth that is happening in various forms going to affect demand? A friend from Odisha, he asked about increasing presence of solar pumps, increasing availability of electricity. Why not? Why only solar? In many parts of eastern India, assured availability of electricity is leading to also electric pumps. So abstraction is increasing. And of course, climate change. Because if people believe that there is going to be a crisis, like it happens when there is a crisis and hoarding happens, how is it going to affect customer behavior? If you look at water users as customers, how is it going to affect customer behavior? So what is it that you have to say about in such a scenario? What needs to be done I mean, we spoke about some of this already, but going forward, what are current limitations that we need to overcome? Yeah, anyone? And it's
What you spoke about the domestic demand, I'm not too sure, because the question comes. See, there is a water crisis every summer in most of India. So, and what is the domestic demand? What is the percentage of domestic demand? It's, I think, 0.01. I'm talking about drinking water, and if you include the livestock, it's slightly more. So the thing is, it's if we are not, that surely shows that if we can't even satisfy this much of even the drinking water or domestic one, we can't satisfy. That means there is something completely wrong with our management. So you talked about Jal Jeevan Mission and all. As they're not, the whole thing is about piping, but who's looking at the source? Who's protecting the source? Nothing like that is happening in the large. What I've heard, it's just a contract-driven kind of program where they are not looking at the source. Neither they are looking at protecting the source. So how will this demand be changed? I'm not too sure. Because we are not looking at we are looking at agriculture which is consuming the most amount of water, and we are not looking at what kind of agriculture are we going to continue. So until and unless we talk about agriculture, because it is 90% of the water is being consumed by agriculture, and I don't know what is the count of probably now more than 40 lakhs.
Let me, sorry.
Yeah.
See, this is a very easy way to get out of this situation.
Yeah.
When you say 90% of water is used by agriculture. No, if you look at the last user of water, the woman who has to now walk 3 kilometers to get water in summer,
Right.
this number doesn't help.
Right.
So let us start talking about there. Now, if you look at the last village, the last person in the last village, what is it that we need to do that we have not done so far as institutions, as facilitators?
So,
See, the 90% is a very macro number.
But so that's what I'm saying. In the Jal Jeevan Mission and all, what we are now banking upon is basically the institutional strength of women who are actually truly participating in the way what the design actually shows, and that is one thing. First, locating the source of water, and then talking about protection of that source, which is probably to be done by the community. So I don't have any easy answer to the question about, because finally why I'm raising the question, it is finally the same village which is growing a certain type of crop. So the question also has to be very inwards. It can't be just people, if they are growing onions in our area, are completely destroying the last 30 years work on Watershed, because a particular crop is now consuming 4 times the water. So it's also inward questioning within the community. You'll need to raise hard questions with the community. It's not just about government policies or things. The government policies matter because only wheat and rice is being bought. So those are the things. Where is it promoting other things? Where is the MSP for the different kinds of crops? So that is there, but at the same time, the question is also because you are going thirsty with the kind of choices you are making to grow particular kind of crops. So these questions, it's not one way, it's not putting a blame on somebody, but it is assessing the situation to be like that. Yeah. So.
Okay, so I feel it's one of the option may be basically, since this AI technology and this technology is very much advanced. The early days, it's very difficult to have some type of survey. Nowadays, you can get everything. So why don't we use this AI technology and come out with these pockets where there is a possibility of this type of work? For example, it's maybe recharge or something. So there are so many possibilities available through the secondary data. So we will come out with this type of pockets, concentrate on this, work on that level, and then we can go to this community. Of course, the community level participation is always everywhere. That is its part. But with this other technology, maybe we can find out these pockets of this and concentrate on this.
So Libby, you have touched upon the issue of drinking water. So what our experience tell that I think the remote rural areas are far better than the peri-urban and urban areas in terms of contamination of water. We, the citizens of cities, are very poor people who are drinking RO water, and God knows what will be happen with our health. Everybody in this room would be taking B12 tablets. But the far remote rural villages, unless they have mining area, they are better in terms of quality. There the problem is accessibility. Because in every remote areas, whether it's a tribal area or non-tribal area, people have started using solar pumps, diesel pumps, kerosene pumps, and they are lifting water, exploiting groundwater. So the subsurface water which was available to our women at the depth of 40 feet or 60 feet has gone down to 200 feet. And the wells have dried upon. Now there is a need, policy need. How can we manage the Manrega programs, Watershed PMKs programs for the drinking need priority? That is the most important aspect we have to think into.
So at least in the, again, mountain context, we don't have so much of a problem of, over extraction, because, our water source are springs. So if the spring is flowing naturally, then, we get the water. And if it dries up, then, we don't get the water. But, one trend that I've seen through the Jal Jeevan mission is, because money is available, and in many cases, our villages are perched on the mountain top. They have to find, the next tallest mountain from where they can bring the water through gravity. So, because of, I think, funds, they've started, drilling, bore wells. So, there are stories where, because this bore well has been drilled, our springs have dried up. So that's also one point that I wanted to share. But, for us, like I've told you, since, we are fairly recent, one thing that we would like to focus, moving forward is one on, again, that education part, understanding, aquifer. I think, that is the foundation for how we move forward on, governance. Starting from the users, the people who are directly impacting, whose actions are directly impacting the availability of water, and then what we can do so that, we retain, we are able to recharge our aquifer. That's one. And also, the few interaction that we had with water and sanitation committees on questions like 20 years down the line, the Jal Jeevan mission came to us, or at least water supply scheme after the 70s. We didn't have any large scale programs, so it has come to us after nearly 40-50 years, and then it will be another 40-50 years before we get such a scheme. So, but then in between, the population is going to grow. So how are you going to get that additional pipe? How will you ensure that sustainability of the source? So they've also not thought about it. And the questions like we'll go and ask the PhD for additional funds. So that's also one area that for us we would like to focus on. And especially we have already started. We are planning to bring more knowledge about how springs are directly linked to river water, the surface streams and rivers. We are in the process of mapping springs and then linking how springs are the source for rivers and streams. So that's something that we are looking forward to.
Thank you. What we'll do is to go back to the audience now. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so there in the corner.
Thank you for bringing the gender aspect into the water. Very interesting. And one more, maybe the addition to the point is, so whenever we talk about water and its governance, the land rights and water rights goes together. So when we talk about the water governance, principally we need to talk about how we can de-link both the things, because there are other people, other stakeholders who are involved in the water use. That's one point. And the second point, I will bring a case of Andhra Pradesh. So we have seen, so people are migrating, the small holders and the marginal farmers are migrating to the other cities, and they are not doing the agriculture. And in that cost, the borewell, the large farmers are digging borewells. So somehow this elite is capturing the resource so fastly. So how we will dealing this water and land rights may be interesting thing. Yeah, thank you.
ट्राइबल डिस्ट्रिक्ट में काम किया है, छोटारीपुर है या नर्मदा में काम कर रहे हैं। हमने ये देखा है कि ज़्यादातर हम जो काम कर रहे हैं वो सरफेस वाटर को कैसे हम रोक के अंडरग्राउंड रिचार्ज करने के लिए, लेकिन ज़्यादातर जो डिस्ट्रिक्ट का जो रॉक है जैसे उसका रिचार्ज कैपेसिटी भी कम है। मान लीजिए कि अगर रेनफॉल होता है 10 दिन का कंटिन्यूस, तो वाटर टेबल कंटिन्यूस ऊपर आ जाता है, तो वाटर का जो नीचे अंडरग्राउंड जो स्टोरेज होना है वो कम है। तो इसका अल्टरनेटिव क्या हो सकता है, तो हम ज़्यादातर उसको स्टोरेज कैपेसिटी अंडरग्राउंड में कर सकते हैं। दूसरा ये है कि इतने सालों में हम लोगों ने देखा है कि यहाँ एनजीओ है कि गवर्नमेंट है, ज़्यादातर इंजीनियरिंग वर्क काम कर रहे हैं। हाइड्रो जियोलॉजिस्ट का ग्राउंडिंग जो होना चाहिए वो बहुत कम है। अगर हम इसको ज़्यादा स्टैंडर्डिंग देंगे तो हमको लगता है कि थोड़ा हम कम कर सकते हैं अपना इश्यू वाटर का।
Question he raised about storage capacity in hard rock areas. Any inputs from anyone?
देखिए ये गॉड गिवन है। हमारे यहाँ भी हार्ड रॉक है, जो एक्विफर आपका हार्ड रॉक में एग्जिस्ट कर रहा है उसका यही प्रॉपर्टी है, बहुत जल्दी भरेगा और बहुत जल्दी खाली होगा। सो द थिंग इज अगेन दिस जो आपने बोला कि वाटर इज़ नॉट, इट्स अ कॉमन प्रॉपर्टी, तो ये जब तक कम्युनिटी के साथ हम उसको नहीं ले जाते, उसकी बात नहीं करते, तब तक जो इतना अवेलेबल सोर्स है वो उनको पता है और उसको अब कैसे इस्तेमाल करना है वो हमारे को कम्युनिटी के साथ ले जाना ही पड़ेगा। और जो कि एक्चुअली होता है, हमने जो काफ़ी सारे जो पायलट्स किए जिसमें यही वाला इशू आ रहा था कि कैसे इतना ही पानी आने वाला है आपके पास, ये भगवान ने हमारे को इतना ही दिया है, इससे आगे आप कुछ कर नहीं सकते। या तो फिर आपका नर्मदा का पानी आ जाएगा, यू नो दैट, वो वाली जो वो दैट इज़ अनदर ग्रैंड इल्यूजन विच इज़ बीइंग हैपनिंग कि अगर कहीं से आप लिफ्ट करके ला सकते हैं, वो अलग है। पर अगर आपके पास नहीं है सोल्यूशन, तो जितना पानी है उसके साथ कैसे मैनेज करना, वही हमारे को उसी पर बात करनी पड़ेगी। और वो होता है जब लोगों को जब पता चलता है कि यही कैपेसिटी है, फिर आप गेहूँ या वो वाला नहीं लगा सकते क्रॉप, आपको फिर शायद मिलेट्स ही लगाने पड़ेंगे या जो ट्रेडिशनल क्रॉप था वही लगाना पड़ेगा। तो दैट इज़ द अदर थिंग विच वी नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड कि सी इन आंध्र प्रदेश areas which were growing millet started growing rice through groundwater irrigation. Now they are coming back to millets, and that is where the water sharing is happening. So I don't know, human beings will only understand after they finish off a resource. वो एक sad challenge है, पर that is what in between we are trying to not wait for till the crisis comes.
Yeah, thank you very much. I was listening the conversation, and we have talked about the Jal Jeevan mission and all. So I'm just, it's a kind of a supplementary and just sharing our experience, largely working on the central and western Himalayan region. So one of the kind of, we are all talking about the water storage, aquifer, and all this water management, and but the climate change which is happening is one of the major contributors, because the number of days is decreasing, especially the winter rainfalls. So if you're talking about Jal Jeevan Mission has also increased the service levels from 40 LPCD to 55 for the mountain region. And how we're going to get or work around that, one of the questions. And we are also just one of the biggest partner for Jal Jeevan Mission as a kind of building their capacity and also what we experienced, and we have been kind of working in direct mode also, like the tail end villages which we're talking about, and Senti has already indicated. So are they getting the water, sufficient water? Because what we experienced in a remote villages, now we are tantalizing them. Sometime, they were kind of hoping that stand ports where they're getting the water in the morning, it will give them a certain yield. And now, I mean, during the kind of experimentation, they have tested the water, and then people are standing on there. Sometime it will come, but it's never coming. And especially the kind of, the summer season, it's going to be more challenging. So this is one food for thought. And center the kind of, the issues which you're facing in terms of the kind of a peri-urban center, which is coming all across. And especially the water quality issues in the BC and total coliform fecal contamination, how we're going to address it, because we know, I mean, through the program they have given the FTCs and how many people know how to operate, and this is kind of one of the indication only, right? So this is one part. And ultimately, if you really wanted to just, look around the kind of institution and all, so we need to link this kind of, water to the incentivization somehow, because they are the kind of, the community is the real custodian to the, natural resources. And this is one part. So how we are just kind of building this, and how we kind of rope in terms of the, in terms of kind of, giving them more incentive through the Gram Panchayat or some schemes, that would be the kind of, the future growth or the kind of a prospects that we look for. These are some of the kind of a pointer I would like to flag to, which may help. Yeah, thank you.
So a question for the panel, in terms of what's changing in the future, one of the things that's happening is environmental sort of sustainability reporting and corporate sustainability measures. Do you see them skewing some of the activities that CSOs are doing? For example, pushing a water positivity angle or a water potential angle. Is that distorting some of the actual needs of local communities and what's linked to science as well?
आपसे मैं पहले बात करना चाहूँ, क्योंकि एक्चुअली वो पूरे हमारा जो सेशन है वाटर गवर्नेंस की बात है, और ये ज़्यादातर पूछा जाता है कि अगर आपके पास में ग्राउंड वाटर कम है तो क्या करना चाहिए. कई जगह पर ये है कि सरफेस कम है. सो आई थिंक भविष्य ये है कि कंजंक्टिव यूज़ ग्राउंड वाटर का और सरफेस वाटर का. अब ये जानना ज़रूरी होगा कि नीचे कितना है और ऊपर कितना है. और अनफॉर्चुनेटली 50 साल से हमारे देश में ग्राउंड वाटर मैनेजमेंट मतलब पीजोमीटर है ना. सेंट्रल ग्राउंड वाटर बोर्ड ने और स्टेट ग्राउंड वाटर बोर्ड ने जो पीजोमीटर का जो फ्लक्चुएशन है वो भी काफ़ी कम एरियाज़ में है. उसको एक तो है कि हर 5 ग्राम पंचायत के बीच में एक पीजोमीटर करना पड़ेगा, जिससे कि आप ग्राउंड वाटर के फ्लक्चुएशन के आधार पे समझ सकें कि कितना वॉल्यूम अंदर है. उसके बाद में सरफेस के ऊपर आपके पास कितना वॉल्यूम है, दोनों को आपको करना पड़ेगा और बारी बारी से करना पड़ेगा. क्योंकि जियो हाइड्रोलॉजिस्ट के पास में कई सारे मॉडलिंग है और बड़े सुंदर मॉडलिंग है कि इस एरिया के लिए ग्राउंड वाटर का 30% वाटर यूज़ करो, सरफेस के लिए 70 करो. दूसरे एरिया के लिए जस्ट अपोजिट हो जाएगा. लुकिंग टू द लोकल कंडीशन, प्रेसिपिटेशन, सॉइल डेप्थ, परमेबिलिटी, देयर आर लॉट्स ऑफ पैरामीटर्स. बट इसको हमें people science banana padega, and we have started that journey. I think in our country we have developed more than 1000 paid geohydrologists, and thanks to few organizations like my organization, we have developed 200 groundwater para professionals. They are also doing ACT भुज है वो कर रहे हैं, हिमांशु जी हैं पुणे वाले कर रहे हैं. So I think हमें वो जियोहाइड्रोलॉजिस्ट पैरा जियोहाइड्रोलॉजिस्ट है उसकी ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा संख्या बढ़ानी पड़ेगी और उन्हें ग्राम पंचायत के साथ में हमें कहीं अटैच कर देना पड़ेगा. क्योंकि मनरेगा और दोनों का अगर हो जाए मिलन तो ये पीपल साइंस बन जाएगा, एंड इट्स वेरी डूएबल एक्चुअली.
Respond to you is basically, for honest, I can say yes, because this is pushing this maybe for water neutrality, and this thing is very agenda for them. But another side of this is if organizations are very clear about their role or their development, these things. So what they will do, they have a plan in this particular village, particular region or something, and that component can come from this particular CSR, and another component can come through this. So that will not hamper. So basically, if we are fully aware what we have to do, then maybe we can get this type of things. But for CSR, yes, it's
इस पैराजियोलॉजिस्ट और कम्युनिटी के साथ एक्वाफर मैपिंग अपने को करना ही पड़ेगा. जब तक हम वो नहीं करेंगे, और जैसा बताया कि जो सरफेस वाटर का जो मेजरमेंट करना है या जो टोटल वाटर अवेलेबल कितना है, वो बहुत एक ज़रूरी चीज़ है. उसके बिना नहीं हो पाएगा, बिकॉज क्या फिर आप गवर्न करोगे, क्या मैनेज करोगे. सो we have to create lakhs of parageologists in the future, which is a doable thing. I think we can do it if we look forward to it.
One of the CSR agencies, we work on common property resources, mainly on upper catchment. So that agency asks us, by working on forest resources, how can you store the water resources? One narrative is that. Indirect connection है, direct connection नहीं है. And when I was working in field, I asked a few villages कि अगर जंगल काट देंगे तो क्या होगा? The answer I got that कि हमारे जंगल में टिम्बरू होता है, Dioscorus melanzanum, तेंदु we call it. इसका रूट इतना नीचे जाता है कि वो पत्थर को तोड़ता है, पत्थर टूटने से पानी रिचार्ज होता है. और हमारे जंगल में टीक के पत्ते होते हैं, टीक है, टीक का पत्ता इतना बड़ा होता है कि कितना भी बारिश होगा वो पत्ता उसको फर्स्ट लोड को झेलता है, तो इरोजन नहीं होता है. इसलिए हमारे जंगल में अगर टीक और टिमरू है तो हमारा ग्राउंड वाटर और सरफेस वाटर मूवमेंट बहुत अच्छा होता है. एंड देयर इज अनदर नैरेटिव दैट सेज कि इनडायरेक्ट इम्पैक्ट है, इससे कोई लेना देना नहीं है. एंड हाउ डू यू ब्रिंग दैट सिटीजन साइंस एंड दिस अनदर नैरेटिव दैट इकोसिस्टम इंटरकनेक्शंस कुछ नहीं होता है. पानी बचाना है तो तालाब खोदो तभी पानी बचेगा. ग्राउंड वाटर बढ़ाना है तो तालाब खोदो तभी होगा. If we talk like this, and then we will miss the entire narrative of river health ecosystem and then entire catchment restorations. How can we bring that interconnections of two ecosystems in the thought process and the narrative when we are talking about water governance?
हेलो एवरीवन. जो अभी किसी ने बात छेड़ी थी लैंड एंड वाटर राइट्स की, सो उसी बात को कनेक्ट करते हुए मैं आगे क्वेश्चन को ले जाना चाहूँगी. वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट फ्यूचर ऑफ वाटर गवर्नेंस, एंड सो हाउ दिस वाटर एंड लैंड राइट्स कैन बी it's a big issue in the not in the our country, it's in the world. So how can we bring some policies or any approach we can dealt with it, and can CSOs play a different role, or can we do something small on an innovative basis? This is my question. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, I am the last. Okay. So having heard all of you, I think very insightful discussions and very interesting conversations. I think one dimension that we often forget, that this is a common pool resource. It's held in public custodian trusteeship by all of us. It's not by the government, but all of us. Second is the differentiation between the knowledge, science, data. How do we kind of look at these components? And rightly, in the last moment, we rightly pointed out, without HR, it's not going to be possible to kind of build this up towards the levels that we want. Whether it's para-hydrogeologists to the scientists that we seek who are mapping the various things. So how do we look at these combinations, technology, and then how do we kind of look at demystification of knowledge, and how do we differentiate between the right knowledge and the kind of half knowledge, I wouldn't say the wrong knowledge, but half knowledge, and how do we kind of collectively work towards the larger elephant understanding, which currently we were earlier thinking of 5 blind men, and that time we were looking at drinking water, water resources, soil and water conservation, rural development, environment, 5. Now we are adding layers of climate change, we are adding layers of different other urban, peri-urban issues. Now how do we combine these? And I think in that context, I think one of the examples that most of you are doing is the looking at the weather data. How do you integrate weather data into the day-to-day rural livelihoods part of it? How do you link that with the rural livelihoods of whether it's the irrigation systems or the water balance and water budgeting? Again, there's the difference between water budgeting, crop water budgeting. How do you kind of understand that and work towards with the communities, whether it's in the valley to valley approach or whether it's in the watershed, and combining it with the geohydrological layers part of it. So just a point to add, nothing as questions towards anybody.
So I think to your question, your contribution is well taken. To your question about policy, I think I will speak on behalf of the panel also because of time. Policy comes because there is some interest. Now that interest could be very convoluted vested interest, or interest like most people sitting here have contributed to some policy either at the union level or at the state level, or at least at the local level. That's because we demonstrate a certain set of action, and any policy that's come because there has been down demonstration of what needs to be done and what comes out. And I think in the context of this topic, probably we need to look beyond what we've already been doing, and a lot of these conversations are explorations around that. Like Pawan is asking about, at what level do you understand aquifer? NACUM is there at somewhere in the stratosphere. It doesn't help anybody. So how do we then influence aquifer knowledge policy, aquifer mapping policy of the Government of India? So I think we need to have more demonstration, and this group, this community is the one that does that. So I want to have the panelists to have the final word, but before that I just want to summarize, and I will give you a chance for a final word, but answer to my question. I mean, they can have any car as long as it's black car from my shop. So essentially I was just trying to do a quick, I'm not trying to summarize, but 4 core points as we look forward, that 4 phrases that struck me in this conversation, both from the panel and from the house. Somebody said, we need to know what we have. And in the absence of that, we cannot talk about governance. You cannot have a governance framework unless we know what is it that we have, be it in the form of knowledge about aquifer, knowledge about volume of water that we have, or rainfall that we have, or infrastructure that we have. Second, we need to link the substantially engineering aspect of water with what is social and behavioral change around that. We need to be inward looking around demands. It's not just sufficient to say that there is scarcity or some systems are preventing us from access, but we need to also look at our behavior. And the need for better education, whether it is water education, whether it is aquifer education. And that point what you made about linking this various frames of rights, I still haven't internalized it much, but I think that's also a very interesting point of action that many of us will need to work on. So that was not a summary, but some key points that I have. Now back to the panel, one last question. And I think you put it in a very big way, in a very good way. I'm making a statement here, and you can respond, you can not respond. This is water we are talking about. Can we govern water by managing everything else and leave water to itself? Water will do what it has to do. If we are talking about access, equity, everything, growth, is there a way for us to do everything else, manage everything else?
If everything is managed well, I guess water will do its job. But I guess there is mismanagement in everything else. Because of that, which is we are facing this crisis. So water has to be a part of everything. It's not something. It's not a resource. It's life itself. So what are you doing with that is important. So is any other thing which is being managed well? That is my question to you. Whether if it is, then it will definitely reflect on water. Yeah, just short. Yeah.
The reason why we are managing water is because it has been mismanaged. So I think there's no right or wrong answer. So if it was managed well, then we would not have been managing, or we would not have been doing what we are doing. So essentially what we are doing now today is trying to right what was wrong in the past. So yeah, that's my
Yeah, I think if we will go back to this previous session, this is system thinking. So if we link this water with this everything in the system thinking, then maybe we can get this answer for this. Even in that case, we can find out this leverage of something. It may be a water, it may be everything else. And then there may not be a requirement of this.
I think Libby is trying to get an answer that, I think he has a firm belief that we have to work at the ecosystem level so that the water can be taken care. But I think it's complementary. We can't think about the ecosystem without water, and we can't think water without the ecosystem, because if just you imagine the full earth is filled with water and no man is there, so what is the use of water? So water is important for human being, and human being is important for water. So we have to tackle the aspiration of the youth, aspiration of the farmer, aspiration of the industry. So we have to work on that front also. And similarly, we have to literate everyone that water is important and it is a common pool, and we have to use it very, very, very wisely.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody. I hope you woke up at some point, enjoyed. If you did not, I'm not responsible, Harshvardhan is. But the panelists was fabulous, happy, and thank you very much.